Running a trucking business is hard as it is, but what makes it even harder is if you're fighting against your own systems. If customers either don't call back, they don't pay quickly, or they're just plain hard to deal with, it might not be the market, it might not be the customer, it might be friction in your own business. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm Chris. This is my 7th year owning a trucking company and hosting the Haulin Assets podcast. When I first started, I thought I knew trucking. Turns out I had no idea how much I would learn. Welcome back to Haulin Assets 2.0, where I take you through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs of being an owner-operator.
Indeed. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Haulin Assets podcast, episode number 191. We're talking friction. We're talking resistance. And I love the way you put it in the teaser, Chris, because it reminds me of somebody who, goes through serial marriages, or, they're constantly breaking up with this or that boyfriend, or maybe they hold a job for a year and then they keep moving on to something else. And at a certain point, you have to say, what's the common denominator here?
Is it me?
So that's what we're going to be getting into. Appreciate everybody joining us today. I'm Craig, your host over there. He's Chris. And this is the Haulin Assets podcast, which you can find at haulinassetssllc.com. Also go check out motorcarrierhq.com and haulinassettsacademy.com. Did I miss any .coms? I think that's
maybe one or two, but that's
yeah, okay. And go leave a review and I'll say all this stuff again at the end. But for now, let's get into what the topic is for today, which is friction in the business. Now, Chris, in your opener, you said you might be fighting against your own systems, which I thought was an interesting word. And I think there might be some time to dig into that. Another word that I find very interesting that we're going to talk about a lot is friction, because, and I promise we will not get into my philosophical obsession for the last 5 years with the word friction. We're going to leave that aside.
Ooh, man, talk about a teaser.
Oh, dude. People can message us on Facebook or wherever. You tag me in your post and maybe I'll let you know what
there aren't many things that get me more excited about put a big smile on my face than you getting excited about and philosophical about something. So it's
let's just say friction is an idea that I've been interested in a lot of different angles. Okay, but today we're talking about it in terms of trucking companies running your own. Okay, so you go from driving a truck to owning and driving a truck. Congratulations, you are now an owner-operator. Oh crap, that means you have to, like we've said many times, even recently, you're going to be wearing a lot of different hats. And, this is how I'm getting into the topic. Chris, you can bat me aside anytime you want, but this new owner-operator is going to be wearing a lot of hats. And each of those hats comes with a system. So whether you're talking about your sales skills, your operational skills, you're in finance, you're in collections, you've got all these different, call them verticals if you want, and that's not quite the right term here, but all these different categories, these systems that you're going to have to put in place. And that's what we want to talk about today is like identifying and removing the friction in your own systems, right?
Absolutely. And if you think about it, we say friction, there's friction in every aspect of our lives, right? You can't completely get rid of it, but you can always reduce it. You think about it with a truck, truck has friction everywhere. If you haven't adjusted your brakes right and your brakes are a little bit tight, that's going to create friction. You may still be moving along with that truck. That truck may still be moving, but it's working harder, means you're burning more fuel. You're causing more wear and tear on parts. All that additional unnecessary friction is going to cause you problems and challenges. And so as we get into this episode, we're going to talk about where are some frictions in your business. And I want you to think, every business is different and friction points are going to be in different spots, but where are your friction points? Where is that resistance? How can I get rid of it? How can I make life better? And one of the big things I really want to focus on today with this is with customers. How do you reduce the friction your customers feel when they're dealing with you?
Okay. So there are several different areas that we want to talk about when it comes to friction that you can experience. We're going to get into communication. We're going to get into kind of the onboarding process that you go through as a new owner operator. We're also going to talk about, that thing that you're in this for, money, right? Invoicing, cash flow, that sort of thing. So there are a few areas that we're going to talk about this with. Once we're done with that, we are going to update people on financials. Okay, we're a few months behind. I just want to tease that so people stick around if they're interested in that, and you should be. After we're done with this, we're going to be talking about February financials, which we're still catching up on. So, Chris, let's talk communication. When you talk about friction in communication, there's a couple of different ways I could see approaching this concept. One would be let's call it your interpersonal style, right? How much are you creating friction in your conversations, in your emails, and your text, whatever? But then there's also this, the systematic part of your system, right? The systems you have in place to communicate with people. What do you want to talk about? How do you want to tackle this topic of friction in communication?
Friction is one of those things that it causes frustration. So if you kind of think about friction and frustration equally, that's a lot of what it is with communication. When you're communicating, the way you reduce that friction is by reducing frustration. So you take, for example, I remember reading years ago, The 4-Hour Work Week. Have you ever read that?
No, but I'm familiar with its work.
Yeah. So interesting book. One of the things that he always talked about that is I only respond to emails once a day. I'll go into my email system. I'll look at it once a day and I'm done with it. If you try to do that in the trucking world and as a broker or a carrier, you're just going to make people mad. Like when brokers want an answer on something, they want it now. In fact, you should be anticipating their questions and emailing them or responding, communicating with them before they even ask for it. That's how you reduce the friction. That's how you reduce the frustration. And you make it so it's easier for your customer, that broker, that shipper, to work with you. And that's really what this kind of all boils down to, is reduce the friction so that people want to work with you rather than working with somebody else.
Right. Okay. So you've hit lightly on a few of these already, but I want to ask you, what are some really common friction points? Okay. So if somebody emails you at 8:00 in the morning and you don't get to them until 8:00 the next morning, that's a problem, right? But what other common,
here's an example of that. Say you booked a load with a shipper yesterday that's picking up today, and that shipper emails you at 7:00 in the morning and says, "Hey, is your truck unloaded? Where's it at? Is it going to make the pickup appointment on time?" And if that pickup is supposed to be at noon and you don't respond to them till 11, guaranteed that shipper is going to be super nervous that your truck's not ready, something's gone wrong. Everything could be just fine, but you're not replying to them. You don't say anything, and they're going to assume the worst. And what are they going to end up doing?
They could cancel the load. They could just not call you next time.
Either of those. And it's really, really likely that they're just going to drop you from the load. They don't have confidence that you're following through on your end of the bargain. I'm going to go find another carrier. I can't fail my customer by dropping this load. And so I'm going back to you, or I'm going to somebody else because you didn't respond to me. And so you've created a friction. You've created frustration. They've moved on. Not only are they going to drop you this time, but they're probably not going to book a load with you in the future.
Right. This is not dating. This is not, hey, I'm going to play the game a little bit. I'm hard to get. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm unavailable. I can't go on a date until 2 weeks from now. This is not that game. This is making sure that communication is really clear so there are no surprises, right? Because you can blow this out to international macroeconomic terms and say that uncertainty is the death of an economy. But you can also shrink that down to a single owner operator and say that's true of your business. Uncertainty will kill your business. And it's not just your uncertainty. It's all of those people around you that you're trying to work with.
Yeah.
How's that as a way to just restate that?
That's great. That's a good way to put it. One other thing I kind of like to mention with this is so in that same example, a good option is, the shipper emails you at 7:00, asks you the question, and you reply back at 7:15 and say, yeah, truck's unloaded, ready to go, no issues making the appointment time. The best option is the truck got unloaded at 1:00 in the morning. My after hours folks reply to the broker at 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whenever and say, hey, truck, just wanted you to know, truck's unloaded, everything's good. They'll be to the appointment on time before the broker or shipper even asks for it.
Okay, so you're anticipating what people are going to need.
You're anticipating a need and filling it. That broker is going to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even have to waste my time sending them an email. They just automatically took care of it. I like this guy.
I like that. That's good. And so this is one of those things. I like this idea of anticipating needs, but I do want to speak to the brand new or the owner operator, soon to be owner operator, right? Some of these things come with time and experience. Okay. So you're going to screw up sometimes.
Absolutely.
You're going to make mistakes. That's okay. You want to minimize those. I mean, it's not okay to make mistakes, right? But you got to have a little forgiveness for yourself. But the other thing I would say is when it comes to something like you're talking about, how do I not piss off a broker? How do I not piss off a shipper? If anything does happen and it's minor enough that you still have an open line of communication with that person, go ahead and ask, right? Just say, hey, I appreciate your patience with this. What would be the best way to do this in the future?
Yeah.
And they'll freaking tell you, right?
And I love that you asked the question that you care. It
Right.
shows that you care, and that means a lot.
Yep.
Caring goes so far.
Okay. So, and we're not talking just about Care Bears, right? Care about your business.
Absolutely. And care about your customer's business. If you care about your customer's business, that's what really sets you apart.
There you go. We should get, that's the new t-shirt, Chris. We're going to get new t-shirts made. It's going to have Motor Carrier HQ on the front, and on the back, instead of drive like a trucker, it's going to say give a So, all right, there's your new t-shirt idea. All right, number 2, and I messed this one up when I teased it because we want to talk about onboarding, and I think there is a lot to say about onboarding yourself as an owner-operator, but we want to talk about onboarding as a consistent, ongoing process. You're always going to be working with new shippers or receivers. You're going to be talking to new brokers, heck, insurance reps and bankers around you, whoever it is that you have in your circle on a daily or monthly or yearly basis. Building a new relationship with those people is really important, right? Get off on the right foot, strong first impression, all that, right? Is that what we're getting toward?
That's a part of it. Whenever you book a load with somebody the first time, there's a whole process that you have to go through. And honestly, I kind of, to look at this a little bit closer, I want to put ourselves in the broker's shoes, because the pain points in this is really more for us as a carrier. So it's something, if you've been booking your own loads for any given period of time, this is something that you've run into. And this is an example of where some companies recently have come into the market and really helped reduce that friction. And so it's a good example of what I'm talking about in reducing friction in your business. So if you're a carrier and you're hauling a load for ABC broker for the very first time, that broker is going to have a setup packet that you have to complete. 3 years ago, 90% of the setup packets that you had to do, they'd send you a PDF, like an application. It'd take you, half an hour to an hour to fill it out. Then they'd send you a contract. You had to submit all this documentation. It would take you an hour or two and was a pain in the butt.
And this is why nobody switches doctors or dentists, because they just fear that intake form, right?
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
It's a pain in the butt. It's annoying. You hate it. Recently, I'm going to use Highway. Highway is a company that came in and it's kind of disrupted this, and they've really taken over the market because their process is so smooth. It makes it easy. And one of the reasons this is at the forefront of my mind is because we recently just had to onboard with a new broker that did everything the old school way. And I'm like, it reminded me of how big of a pain in the butt it was to go through this process.
The bad old days.
The bad old days, yeah. Well, with Highway now, what they've gone in and done, and they've kind of essentially automated the whole thing. So, as a carrier, we set up our profile one time with this company. We submit our insurance information one time. We submit our W-9 one time. We submit our motor carrier authority one time. We submit all this documentation one time. And then every time a broker that uses that Highway system wants to book a new load with us, it takes it seriously from a multi-hour process to you can do it in 5 minutes, like literally 5 minutes, clicking a few buttons, read through the contract real quick, and you're done. It's so smooth and so easy. That is a company that's come in and reduced the friction. It makes it so next time, like I work with the broker and they're like, oh, hey, fill out this whole packet. I'm like, I'm going to go find another load. I don't want to go through this. Highway's made it way easier to work with some brokers and shippers by almost automating that whole entire process.
I love that. Okay. So anything else on that specifically that you want to hit as far as, onboarding brokers and whatnot?
There's one more experience that I want to talk a little bit about, and this kind of applies more to us in our situation. So this last winter, we sat down with one of our customers that we do a pretty regular amount of business with. And one of the questions I asked was, what can we do to make things a little bit easier for you? How can we reduce that friction for you? And he said, what would make it really easy for me? Rather than having to go in and every time I book a load with you, go in and find the pickup location, because they've got like 5 or 6 different pickup locations that we'd pick up from depending on what their need is. And then we, deliver it to the same place every time. And he's all like, every time I have to go write an email, here's where you're picking up, here's who you need to talk to, and here's when I need it by. If I could just shoot you a text with go to this location and I don't have to worry about it, that would make my life so much easier. And he's all like, you know what? I'll make a list of the locations that you go to do the pickup with all the contact info, and we'll go from there. And I said, you know what? I'll one up you. We've already picked up at all these locations. We have that information in our system. Let me go back. I will compile the list. I'll shoot it to you so you can see it and say, yep, that's it. Or no, here's the changes we need to make it easier. That's one way that in our business, I reduce friction for that customer is by, just taking care of that piece for them. Honestly, it took me like 10 minutes to do. And that's 10 minutes of my time versus 10 minutes of my customer's time. Again, I reduce friction for him, makes it easier. It makes them like, oh, I like doing business with these guys. They make my life easier. They solve a pain point or a problem that I have.
I love that. Okay. And that it sort of dovetails into something that I wanted to say on this subject as well, which is kind of getting to what I was hinting at earlier. You're one side of this equation. So we're talking about, there's some pain points when you're working with a new broker and they've got the new packet and okay, great. Highway is here to help solve that problem. What are the pain points? And this gets to anticipate their needs and their frustrations that you were talking about earlier. What are the possible friction points that they're going to have working with your company that you can help solve? And you can blow this concept out to stuff that we've talked about for years and years and years. I mean, I kind of opened up this conversation talking about the different hats that you have to wear. You've beat the drum of, hey, go find those direct shippers, those relationships, build the relationships. And how can you smooth the friction of somebody learning who you are and knowing about your background and your track record of success, and how do they get a hold of you? This is why salespeople always have these nice little one sheets that describe their company. Or you have an email template that's ready to go at a moment's notice when somebody has a question. Find those, anticipate those pain points in your sales process as a business owner. And there's so many different areas where you can use this idea of onboarding and reducing friction in it that are going to make your life a lot easier and potentially make you a lot more money.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
You said hey, this is 10 minutes of my time. This is a task that maybe it's a little bit annoying, but it's something that I know how to do and I know how to do it quickly. That's 10 minutes out of your day for the potential of somebody who's going to pay you thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your relationship. Take the 10 freaking minutes.
Yeah. Oftentimes, like if it's something that it may take me 20 minutes to do, but it saves my customer 10 minutes, I'm going to do it because that builds that relationship. Most of these brokers and shippers, especially if you're a small carrier that you work with, they're working with other carriers. You're not the only one that they deal with. So anything you can do to kind of reduce those friction points in dealing with you, that makes you look better than everybody else. And you're going to become the preferred carrier, which means you're getting the best rates, the best loads, and you're getting those more often. It may not change what you get paid, but it'll change how often they come to you versus somebody else.
Right. Yep. You don't want to haul just one load if you can.
Yeah.
Get that relationship going. Okay, Chris, last subject, I don't know what to call it here. The subject as far as reducing friction, the all important, get yourself freaking paid, right? Get that money. Stack the cash, Chris. All right. So invoicing, cash flow, what are the common areas of concern here, friction points that people often run into?
One of the biggest ones is, probably 50% of the brokers that we deal with, you've got different systems and processes with each broker on how you submit the paperwork at the end. Pretty much every last one of them, you have to submit it to the accounting department, right? You submit the proof of delivery, you submit the rate confirmation. If there's any lumper fees or accessorials or anything like that, you submit a packet with your invoice, all that information to either your factoring company, who then sends it to the broker and their accounting department, or you just send it straight to the accounting department. So one of those two things is happening. The accounting department is getting it one way or another. But then on the other side of that company, you have the broker who actually booked the load, the employee that did that. They oftentimes want that proof of delivery as well. They need some of that information. And you just kind of never know. So one of the things you can kind of do is just anticipate that. Like anytime you send a load, it takes you probably another 10 seconds to send that same invoice packet that has the proof of delivery and everything else to the broker, not just their accounting department. You get both of those people taken care of at the same time. And you're making it so that broker doesn't then have to reach out to you and ask for it again. And so just anticipating those kind of needs. So oftentimes I'll send that broker packet, especially that proof of delivery, before they even ask for it. And maybe they weren't even going to ask for it, but I send it to them. They're never going to be like, oh, why did you send me this? But then those people that actually need it and want it, you've sent it to them. They're taken care of. They're happy. They didn't even have to ask for it.
There you go. And so tell me about the impact on that long term. It's going to be the similar kind of thing to what we were talking about before, right? It's 10 seconds of your time now, but the habit that you build up and the expectation that you build up with your professional contacts and the brokers and whoever else is going to pay dividends. This isn't pointless work. This isn't just you being a nice person. That's good too. Be a nice person, right? Take 20 minutes to save someone else 10 minutes. That's very nice. Okay. But it's going to hit your bottom line.
Absolutely.
Over time.
Yeah. And that's a great transition because I'm happy that this specific topic kind of falls in on a episode when we're also going to talk about financials, because we can kind of tie some of these habits and how it affects and how it impacts our financials. So why don't we transition and go into the February 2026 financials?
You just stole my job, Chris. I'm the professional transitioner.
I anticipated.
Sounds more like a gender thing than a podcast thing.
That's not what you mean.
Back and forth, Chris. All right. So let's talk February financials. Just to catch people up, we did take a break for a few months late in 2025. So we missed a few months, but we did in last week's episode talk about January 2026 financials. We're still doing a little catch up, so we're going to do February today. And I'm anticipating, based on Chris's mood today, I'm anticipating doom and gloom, lots of red numbers. But let's see where it's at. Let's dive in. Okay, Chris. So do you want to preface this at all, or do you want to dive in? Total miles run.
Let's dive right in.
This is 10 trucks, just as a reminder. So you've got 10 trucks running in your small fleet. What are the total miles run?
101,755 miles. So this is actually down 20,000 miles from last month.
Just going to say, so is that, let's see, this was February. So February is a slightly shorter month, which is going to account for some of that. Maybe not all.
I would bet it probably accounted for at least 5,000 to 7,000 of those miles, but it's a 20,000 mile difference. So.
But there's going to be natural fluctuation between months when more or fewer employees are taking vacation or sick days, things like that, where it's just like, hey, we have to price in some fluctuation, but we're always chasing that 12,000 a truck number.
And I can't remember if I talked about this in the last episode, but you think about it, it makes a lot of sense that January would have a ton of miles because everybody, a big chunk of people take the very end of December off, for Christmas and for the holidays. And then when they come back to work after the holidays are over, like every American on the face of the earth, we've overspent our holiday budget. We're out of money and we need to make some money. And so everybody kind of comes back roaring in January. Very few people take time off and they just run really hard all January, play catch up. And so then what does that mean in February?
A little burnout.
A little bit more burnout, and people are taking a little bit more time in February because nobody took time off in January. So it makes sense that January numbers are artificially high and February's are probably a little bit artificially low.
Okay. All right. Well, with that prefaced then, the total miles run, if we round up, we call it 102,000 miles. For total revenue of
$251,077.05. So for a February, like that knocks my socks off. That is a great number, especially considering the number of miles we ran. And here's kind of where I want to tie this back to some of the reducing friction with customers. Over time, over the last several years, even with the overall tough freight market that we've been in, Haulin assets per revenue, per truck, we've slowly been able to creep up to this to now where it feels like the market's starting to turn. And, our customers are like the additional freight that they've got, additional things going on, they're willing to send it to us because we have worked so hard at reducing that friction. They want to work with us as much or more than any other carriers. And we're that's increasing our revenue line.
I love that. Okay. So the all-in rate per mile that you got this month or February was what?
$2.48, which is a little bit higher than last month. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I want to say it was like 244.
246.
It was somewhere right around there. A little bit lower, not much, kind of right in that same ballpark. But again, that's some of the best all-in rates that we've had in years. So I'm going to take it.
A far cry from the would it have been 2024 when we were looking at like 177 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll take 248. That sounds awesome. All right. So the net profit, this is the drum roll, please. Is it a red or a black number? Where are we at?
$44,496.50, which is, again, another really big number. We need to be a little bit north of 30,000, like 34, 35,000 to be cash flow positive. So this is the second month in a row that Haulin Assets has been cash flow positive. I can't even remember the last time that happened. Like it feels really, really good.
So can you give us, Chris, because we've talked about these numbers month in and month out for years now, but somebody might be coming to the show new. Can you give us 30 seconds on the difference between profit, as we just said, and cash flow positive? Real quick, what does that mean?
So the biggest in trucking, the biggest difference between the two is you can show profit on paper on a profit and loss statement, and the profit and loss statement is going to be in the show notes. But where the biggest difference comes in is in your truck payment, because your truck payment is made up, truck and trailer, all your equipment. Your truck and trailer payments, your loans are made up of two parts. There's a principal part and there's an interest part. So just to make things really, really easy, let's say you've got a $2,000 truck payment, and 500 of that is going towards principal and 1,500 is going towards interest, or typically it would be reversed in a truck. And $1,500 going towards principal, paying off the balance of the loan. The other 500 is going towards interest. So on a profit and loss statement, that interest piece is going to show up as an interest expense, but on the profit and loss statement, that truck payment does not show up. And it kind of goes straight to your balance sheet. The way that you make up for that is with adding depreciation at the bottom of the financial statement. I've said this for years. One of these days, I'm going to go in and kind of figure out what all the depreciation expenses are and start to put that in the profit and loss. But I haven't taken the time to do that. So that's where kind of that difference between the profit you show on paper versus cash flow. So we've got roughly of all our truck and trailer payments, roughly $35,000 of that is going towards principal loan payments. And so, it shows $35,000 of extra profit, but in reality, that's still cash spent going out of the business. Right. And so that's where you get that difference between what our profit is and what our actual cash flow is. So these aren't exact numbers, but our cash flow on a $44,000 net income is our positive cash flow is probably somewhere right around $10,000.
Right. Okay. Perfect. So if that was confusing, or if your eyes glazed over or whatever, just rewind 2 minutes and listen to it again.
Listen to it again.
Or Chris, I don't know if I ever told you the story. Back in 2009, when I started podcasting for the first time. You know what book I went out and got? Podcasting for Dummies. Best book I ever bought. And took me through the whole process. Not a bad idea. If your eyes glazed over, or if that was just way above, like your comprehension, no worries. Don't worry about it. You do need to understand the concept, but literally you can go to, it's probably a website now, a Small Business Accounting for Dummies. Yeah. And, take a few courses there and you'll be up to speed. It's not that bad once you get into it, but anyway, but it is important.
You have to hear it several times to really start to be able to understand it. So don't feel bad if you don't understand it right away. Kind of think about it. Look through our profit and loss statement as I'm talking about that, and you can kind of see, you'll see the interest expense, you'll see the total amount, and just keep in mind that 35,000 roughly is all principal payment on loan. So if you're a completely cash-based business, let's say you don't, your truck's paid for, your trailer's paid for, typically in that situation, your net income is going to match your cash flow perfectly. If you've got loans, it probably doesn't.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's lightning round any other lessons or just reasons for the strong month. What else? You talked about the strong market.
Yeah, the top three contributors to really kind of the financials this month were the strong market. That $2.48 a mile is great. It's really, again, it's the best we've seen since early 2022 or late 2021. We'll take that. Another thing that you'll see that's different is we haven't been paying nearly as much in tolls as we were 3 or 4 months ago. I talked about readjusting the routes that we've gone on. We're avoiding the Northeast quite a bit, and that's where a lot of those toll expenses came from. So we've really, I think at our high point, we're over $4,000 a month in tolls, where this month we're under $1,000. So big difference.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Then the last thing I want to talk about, and this kind of, again, I'm going to tie it back into this friction that we're talking about. Our maintenance and repairs has stayed pretty consistent over the last little while. And one of the things that's kind of helped keep that consistent is the main mechanic we use. He doesn't do any of our services, but when we need, tires replaced, or we need air leaks fixed, or an airbag replaced, some of those non-engine related repairs, he does them. And he has done a really good job of removing the friction and dealing with him. He's a great example of this. One, he is a small shop. In fact, he's kind of works like a mobile mechanic. Oh, yeah, he's a one-man band. He's like the owner operator of trucking maintenance, commercial vehicle maintenance and repairs. He has a mobile truck trailer that he's got a location that we can either drive our trucks to, or he can even come to us when that makes sense. So he's made it really easy. He's got all the contact for our drivers. Our drivers can either contact him directly and say, hey, I need this done, and then he'll get it approved for us. Or we can contact him and say, hey, this truck needs this. Can you coordinate with the driver to find a time and a place to get that taken care of? He's just done a lot of things like that make it very easy for him to work with. He's very reasonable price because his overhead is so low. So he saves us money. He makes our lives easier. And we trust him. Like he shoots straight with us every time on, hey, this needs to get done now, or we can wait off a little bit on this, or no, this repair really doesn't need to be done.
Yeah. Well, this sounds like somebody who needs a shout out. What's his name? What's his company?
Bobby with MCK Diesel Repair. So if you're ever in the northern Utah area, he is great. He'll take care of you. And like I said, he's made our lives easy to deal with.
Well, Chris, I've got my own housekeeping at the very end of the episode, but do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share?
Just one like final call to action. I challenge all of our listeners to kind of go in and look at your business and say, how am I making things a little bit more difficult than they need to be? Where in my interactions with my customers, with my drivers, if I'm an owner operator, in my processes where I can make my life easier, where I can make my customers' life easier, where are those friction points that I can reduce? Find them.
Okay.
Get rid of them. You don't need them.
You actively need not to have them.
Yes.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. I'll just remind you one more time, HaulinAssetsLLC.com for the full show notes, including for the newcomers out there. You can see, like Chris said earlier, the profit and loss statements going back. How many years, Chris?
Almost 7 years. Can you believe that? Holy
7 years. So yes, there was a little gap at the end of 2025, but yeah, you can see 7 years worth of profit and loss statements. If you want to see the ups and downs of what it's like to not only start a trucking company, but try to add trucks to it and build a small fleet, it's all there. The numbers are there for you to check out. So HaulinAssetsLLC.com. If you're ready to make the leap from employee driver to owner operator, you do not have to do it alone. There are 2 places you can go. HaulinAssetsAcademy.com for some self-directed learning about some key issues that you're going to run into. I mean, we've been talking about accounting issues, right? Like there are things that you will need to know. Go bone up at HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. And of course, motorcarrierhq.com. There are tools, tips, calculators. There are people there that you can talk to about how to make that leap, all the stuff you need to know. Oh, and lastly, for anybody who's going to the, what's it called? The Mid-American Truck Show, MATS, as we insiders call it. It's March 26th to the 28th, yes, in Louisville. So if you're going to be there, we'd love to see you there. Look us up. I'm sure there'll be more details to come, but for now, if you are planning to attend, come find us. Chris, thanks so much for coming. See you next time.
We'll see you then.